recording as well. Perfect. So we will be recording the session. However, I'm going to talk about the advantage to staying to the end very shortly as well. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to shut off the webcam aspect so that we don't have any slowdown and everybody can hear me okay. If there are any video or audio problems, just type it in the chat box and we'll grab you. I'll try and deal with it there. Oops, I hit the wrong button. I'm good with technology just as long as it listens to me. Okay, so you should be able to see my screen right up there in the on your main screen, and you should be able to scale that as far as that's concerned in your own web browser. And just open that. Perfect. Okay, so hello everybody and welcome to today's call. My name is George Gill from Gill Solutions, and today we're going to be talking about what is the right social media network for my business. And this is an interesting question. This is an interesting concept to talk about because most webinars you see are about, you know, how to do great things on Facebook or how to do amazing things on LinkedIn or how to maximize Twitter or whatever the case may be. Very rare do you ever hear people talking about the pre due diligence you need to do before you start building that audience, building that exposure and that traffic that you want to generate from social media networks. And in talking to clients all over the world, that is very unfortunate. And we're going to talk about why it's unfortunate and why this is such an important topic. And taking the time to do this step, what I referred to as due diligence, essentially, to make sure you're on the right track before you get going. So, without further ado, let's move on here, and I'd like to begin today's session with a question. Now, this question is about phishing, and yes, it does relate to our topic today, believe it or not. And to be honest, technically, this is a math probability question disguised as a phishing question. So you really need to pay attention here because once we start dealing with math, you need to pay attention to the numbers, right? Okay, I hope you're all ready. Here we go. Let's say you have a body of water that is 50 miles by 50 miles in size. This lake is fairly deep, averaging, say, 250 feet deep. And in this body of water, you have collectively about 5 million fish, right? 5 million fish. But of those fish, only 10,000 of them are over 2 feet long. We'll call this lake 50-mile Facebook Lake, all right? Now, you have a second body of water that is 2 miles by 2 miles and is about 50 feet deep. It has about 50,000 fish, okay, versus that 5 million fish. And again, only 10,000 of those fish are 2 feet long or larger. And we'll call this 2-mile target lake. And then finally, we have a very small lake, very private lake that we'll call bathtub lake. And really, there's no fish in there at all. Okay, so there's your situation. All right, so my question is, if your mission is to catch a minimum of a 2-foot long ideal fish, which lake would you rather fish in? Now, you can answer this many ways, but just the sheer question alone gets us thinking a little. And if we consider the sheer probabilities, the math probabilities, assuming everything else about the lakes is equal, and we just look at the numbers here, there is a 0.002% chance of catching your ideal fish in 50-mile Facebook Lake. Where 2-mile Target Lake, there is a 20% chance of catching your ideal fish. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm thinking 2-mile Target Lake is looking pretty good to me at this point. Okay, but all joking aside and referencing to phishing, there are actually some really important points to this little story. And we'll be talking about them throughout the presentation and the importance of them in selecting the right social network for you to go fishing for your ideal clients. Okay, so we're just kind of putting this association here to think about it in the broader spectrum. A lot of people have that initial impression, about the big major social networks like Facebook. Oh, you have to be on Facebook because everybody is there. And I want you to start thinking about this as we go through the presentation, and we'll reference back to this little fishing story, if you will. But first, let me introduce myself and give you an idea as well of what we'll be covering today. My name is George Gill, and I am the founder, partner, and senior marketing consultant for Gill Solutions Management. We're a digital marketing agency of about 25 people, providing online marketing services as well as training, consulting, and coaching services globally. We have offices both in Canada and the United States, and our clients are typically small to mid-sized businesses, although we do coaching for enterprise clients as well, looking to grow their businesses utilizing online strategies. Our claim to fame, if you will, is our transparency for developing, implementing, and/or consulting on strategies which have clearly defined objectives and metrics to evaluate and continually improve on your ROI. In short, we are a measurement strategy driven marketing solutions company. That's a mouthful, but that's basically how we look at it. I also co-host the Measurement Doctor podcast, where our slogan is simply don't do a thing in business unless you're measuring it, and that pretty much covers everything from marketing to operations, etc. My background travels back to actually pre-internet age. I started my first company over 25 years ago, where my focus was traditional marketing strategies. So in things like direct marketing, as well as more conventional mediums like television, radio, and print. I founded Gill Solutions in 2006, where we took our focus and we tightened it to digital strategies. And over the last 11 years have come to believe through case after case after case that any marketing strategy can work. The differentiator between success and, let's say, mediocre results or worse is the application of measurement. Okay, and I'd be happy to talk to anybody on this topic because numbers are something that I truly am passionate about, and figuring out why something's working and why something's not. And that just gets me very excited, essentially. Okay, so today our topic of discussion is what is the right social network for your business. On a side note, if you hang on to the end of the presentation, I'll also be providing a download to a checklist for social network evaluations, which is essentially going to have all of the hot points that we're covering in the presentation today. And my reason for doing that is hopefully this is going to free your note-taking requirements for paying close attention and asking questions that can really help your unique situation, as I believe every business is unique to a certain degree. So hold on to the end for that, and I will pass along the download right here, hopefully if it's successful in this GoToWebinar kind of drop and download thing. If not, I'll give you a link. So either way, we're going to get it to you. But the idea, again, is to take everything that we're talking about and create a system so that you can duplicate it in your efforts. And what we're talking about today isn't rocket science. I mean, it's not going to be revolutionary as much as it's going to be more, hopefully, of a aha, that is a great idea, and I should be implementing these strategies. And even if you're building a social presence today, going back and doing this evaluation is going to give you some clarity on, are you headed in the right direction? Okay, so what is the right social network for your business? This is a great question and a very important one to ask yourself, but why? Why is this such an important question? Besides because George says it is, which is a good enough reason on its own. Just kidding. Sort of. Okay. Well, quite frankly, there are three things you need to realize about social media which emphasize the importance of taking the time to answer this question. Okay. Seeing a couple more people. Yes, Richard, I will be providing the link at the end of the presentation. And it's obviously so everybody stays on, you get the most out of this and just don't go for the checklist. But I will be getting that to you at the end. Please, please do ask any questions that you do have, like Richard did there, in the question box as we go through, because I am going to do a Q&A at the end as well, and I'll address everybody's questions. Okay, so why is this so important? Let's dig into these three specific reasons. The first one is social media is a very labor-intensive strategy. It's not a strategy that you can just set it and forget it. Okay, for social media, regardless of the network that you focus on, regardless, it is going to take a lot of sweat equity, what I like to call sweat equity. Essentially, even if you employ a firm such as ours to provide social media services to manage and oversee your social media, there is still internal requirements that need to be met in order for your social media strategy to be successful. So if one of your ideas after today's presentation was, oh, I'll just get somebody else to do it and wipe my hands of it, although you can do that, it will not be a successful engagement unless you are committing effort and time towards it as well. I can't stress this enough. You need to know that there is a direct correlation to what you get out of social media from what you put into social media. You need to take this into consideration when you are selecting your social media networks to focus, because each one multiplies your commitment. I'll say that again. Each social network that you work to grow multiplies your investment of energy and resources. Okay? Maybe not at 100% the same level, but certainly close. And that is really, really important to understand. Social media is a great amount of work. It is labor intensive. Okay, number two, social media takes time. If you were to run an ad on Facebook today, you would have results today. Okay. Now, that's not to say what kind of results you would have, but nonetheless, you would have some results today if you were to run an advertisement. However, if you were to start a page today on Facebook and began to share your message and build your audience, you'll discover it is not a quick solution. In fact, depending on your base of contacts elsewhere that you have that you can bring to your new page, you actually might be quite lonely for some time. Even if you have an audience already and a page well established, getting your community to engage can be a challenge as well. And conversion, often a major goal for most organizations, can seem like it's nowhere in sight. So it's not only a lot of sweat equity or investment, but even with that, it's going to take time, and you have to set yourself up for success here. You need to go into this expecting it to take time, okay? And number three, social media can be challenging to evaluate its overall benefit, or ROI, return on investment, as we like to say. This one actually plagues most organizations, and essentially of all sizes, right from mom and pops right up to Coca-Cola, struggles with evaluating ROI. But understanding how social media is actually contributing to the bottom line is critical and will be easier to evaluate when you're focused on 1, 2, or 3 networks. Very rare we recommend a company to go beyond 3 networks, and only then if they have the resources to actually facilitate that. Because as I said, lots of sweat equity, right? Okay, so there you have it. Why evaluating what is the right social media network for your business is so critical. It's going to be labor intensive. It's a long-term investment, and your ROI will be foggy or non-existent for some time, okay? Now, all that being said, the benefits, although we will not be covering them today, of getting social media right can be plentiful. But more importantly than that, if you're not currently building your social media presence, I fear there could reach a point where social media is not only a marketing option, but a mandatory survival component of your business. Now, that's for a future discussion, but it's worth considering. It's worth putting in your mind. If you've been in business long enough, you can go back in time with me to a point where, when people would ask you, what's your fax number? Okay. And it was just expected that you had a fax, right? Well, I remember a time before that when I went through a period, and much like many of my peers and other businesses went through a period of questioning, do I really need a fax? Should I have a fax? They were very expensive to start. They're a couple of $1,000s. Do I really need one? And it reached a point where it wasn't no longer an option. You had to have it. Well, there's the potential that social media will be that if it's not already there in many industries. Okay, so it's something to put in the back of your head. Okay, so now that we have the why, and the why is important because if we're going to truly invest in the how of evaluating the right social networks for your business, there must be enough pain in not doing it. And I think there is. I think we just pointed out that whether you realize it or not, hopefully you do up front, that it is that long-term strategy. It is going to be labor intensive. So you are willing to put in this due diligence. But if you don't have that motivation, it's too easy to just kind of slough off or skim over the how and go through the questionnaire that I'm going to provide at the end and really do your due diligence. So it's important that we have that why down, and that why is enough of an influence to push you through. Now, there are 3 key evaluation factors that you need to consider when choosing the right social media networks. Now, there's actually many more than that, but you get these 3 down and you're on the right course. And at bare minimum, you will make a better decision at this stage. Of course, when it comes to analytics, you can always do more. You can always do more due diligence. You can always do more research. And you don't want to get frozen or paralyzed in analysis stage. The whole point of this is to put you on the right track and then make it right. Remember, I started out this presentation by saying I've learned that any marketing strategy can work. You just need to measure and apply measurement to the results to improve it. But by doing this due diligence up front, you put yourself on a much better path. You're not on a dirt road anymore. You're on a freeway to getting the results. So let's dive into these 3 factors, these 3 key evaluation factors of the how, because this is what we're really here to talk about today. Okay, the 3 factors are the who, the what, and the how. And these are sequential in order. So in other words, if somebody doesn't pass the who, you don't move on to number 2. You don't talk about the what, you don't talk about the how. Okay, so they are sequential. You do them in sequence. The who is your audience, your ideal client, your avatar, if you will. Are they hanging out there? And are they active? So if I go back to the fish, right? Do they have those 2 feet or larger fish? And are they biting, right? Are they there? So for example, your ideal avatar may be a 65 plus male retiree and avid golfer. Maybe that's your target audience. Although they may be on Facebook, the question is there a smaller lake that's getting their attention that might be easier and more effective for you to reach, right? Well, we certainly want to know, are they there? Okay, and are they active? The what? The what is the size of the network. And therefore, how much noise do you need to push through to be noticed? And we're going to talk a little bit more about noise because it is such a critical point. Now, size works both ways. Too large, too much noise is going to take a lot of creativity to push through. On the flip side, too small a network, and you may be heard, but if you're practically alone, it won't matter, right? So it's finding that magic balance, and we're going to go into detail on these. The how. How will you attack the network to achieve your objectives? And therefore, is the network platform conducive to your approach, the resources you have, and your style? Okay, so what do I mean by this? Well, let's take YouTube, for example. YouTube is a great choice for many businesses. And frankly, your market, no matter what it is likely there in some way or another. But if you dread doing videos as much as like scratching your nails on, say, a chalkboard, okay, your ability to engage and contribute will be an uphill battle. If you're dreading every time you got to do a video, well, guess what? You're just not going to do the best videos you can. And frankly, pumping out enough videos is going to be a challenge. Now, there's options for this, of course, and it doesn't rule out the option of attacking that network, but it's much easier if your content is easily accessible. Okay, I coach a lot of OBMs, online business managers, who are managing other people's online presence and business, and they consistently complain, for lack of better words, give me the complaint that getting content from their clients is one of the biggest challenges. And very first question I have is, well, does the client actually like the type of content you're trying to drive, and is it accessible to them? If that's not in their realm, why did you put them down that path? You're making your life far harder than it needs to be. There are options out there. There are other social networks that use different types of media that can achieve the same, if not better results, especially if you actually have the content you need, if you just do this upfront stuff, right? We're then going to wrap up these 3 points in an evaluation of probability to greatest success. And again, that's the download that I'm going to give you, which is essentially an evaluation checklist at the end of the webinar. So don't worry, I'm going to get that to you as well. Okay? All right, so let's dive in here. Let's talk about the factor number 1, the who. Who is your audience, your ideal client, your avatar? And for those of you that don't know what an avatar is basically a documented detailed description of who your ideal client is. Now, you can have multiple avatars, and that's okay too, depending on your size. Again, remember that compounding of work thing we were discussing, but you can have multiple avatars. But it's a matter of actually documenting it, going through the process of drawing this person out. When we coach and train on email marketing, we go to the extreme in avatars of putting pictures on your monitor so you're writing to that one person. The more clear you are about this, the more easier this stage of evaluation is going to be. So let's pretend for a minute your ideal client is between the age of 35 and 45, is female, and lives in the country. So they're rural, not urban, right? If we look at current Facebook demographics, we'll see the following. 79% of internet users aged 30 to 49 use Facebook. That is in North America statistic, and it's of all internet users in North America. 79% between the age of 30 and 49 use Facebook. Wow, big number, right? 77% of female internet users use Facebook. 67% of rural internet users use Facebook. So essentially, if you're on the internet in North America, there is a 2/3 chance you use Facebook. That's big, right? That's really big. But it's also noisy. And we're going to talk about that noisy a little bit more, okay, in just a couple of minutes. It's actually very noisy as well. But let's say you get advice that you should be using Pinterest. Hey, you like photos, so why not be on a site that is driven by images? Let's compare. 36% of internet users aged 30 to 49 use Pinterest. 44% of female internet users use Pinterest. And 31% of rural internet users use Pinterest. So at first glance, just looking at these numbers, Facebook may be the obvious choice. But bear in mind the noise. And here's an interesting fact. Pinterest, the second most popular social networking platform, attracts only about a third of rural internet users. But Pinterest is the only social media platform that is more popular among rural online adults than urban ones. 26% of urban internet users use Pinterest. So not only do we have less noise, but a large majority of those that are on the platform fall into our criteria of that rural person. This may mean very well that the effort you put in may have a faster ROI. Okay. Very, very critical. Let's talk about the noise though for a minute, because I keep saying that statement and I want to be really clear about it. It's important to understand. Noise in many ways determines if your post will be discovered, okay, when you're putting out your content. Now, hopefully you're being creative enough that this will be the case, but you are fighting most social networks' news feeds, okay, and their ever-changing algorithm of their news feeds. So knowing this, noise often translates to effort. For example, 70% of Facebook users use the site on a daily basis. 27% of Pinterest users use the site on a daily basis. So my question for you is, which news feed, moves faster if a user is following you? Also, to what level of intensity do you need to be posting on the network to remain relative? I mean, I could post on Facebook 4 or 5 times a day and a person might only see one of my posts, maybe 2, right? If I post on Pinterest for 4 or 5 times a day, by the time that person comes back to Pinterest, maybe 3 or 4 days from now, I'm going to fill their feed. So I don't technically even need to post that frequently to get the same effect as what I would have in Facebook, right? Very, very important. These numbers, incidentally, are 2015 numbers, which are the latest by Pew, P-E-W Research. Pew Research is a nonpartisan research center that collect numbers, facts, and trends. So it's a good source to try and pull this information from, rather than going to, the About Us page and getting, per se, maybe slanted numbers as far as that's concerned. Okay, let's talk about factor number 2, the what. What is the size of the network, and therefore how much noise do you need to push through to be noticed? There is no question Facebook is the largest social media network currently on the planet. However, with over 1.79 billion users, that's their current status, they're greater than that. It's also clear that all the users are not all your ideal client, right? We've talked about noise, and this is a major, major point. Even if others are not targeting your ideal client, the user still needs to filter through the noise to find you. So let's say you're targeting, for example, golf lovers for your business. Let's do a comparison to the Facebook example. A simple search of golf forums will turn up a forum called Golf WRX. Now, Golf WRX has a community of 1.8 million unique readers. Okay, 1.8 million unique readers every single month. That is 0.002% of Facebook's user base. But it's 100% of your ideal client. So it's definitely something to consider if you're looking in the golf industry. Okay, and it's fine to say, well, George, I'm in the golf industry, I'm going to do Golf WRX, and I'm going to do Facebook. That's fine, just as long as you have the resources, the time, the sweat equity, the resources, going back to that, to facilitate more than one, right? You start splitting your time and effort. So that's something to think about when you're thinking about the size of the network. The noise is such a big figure. Okay, factor number 3. Number 3, social media can be challenging, right? We talked about the ROI to evaluate its overall benefit. This one is more for you to keep in the back of your mind when it comes to not only selecting the social media networks you attack, but also how you attack them. Remember, your social media real estate, whether that's a page or a profile, is a lease with no contract. Or at least no contract that's in your favor, okay? Regardless of the network you target, you ideally want your potential client to leave the confines of that network at some point in time and explore you on your own turf, so to speak, your website. And ideally get on your email list or a mailing list or some other means of communicating one-to-one. Okay, where you can eliminate the noise. You want a way, essentially, to connect outside of the network, especially if the rules or the popularity of that network change at some time in the future. Okay, and that happens a lot. If you've been on Facebook very long, you've noticed even as a user, your news feed has really changed over the last 2 years, dramatically. For example, as a general rule, Facebook users are reluctant to leave the Facebook environment. Now, this can actually be a bad thing for marketers, especially with constant changes to that newsfeed I just mentioned, pushing for more advertising dollars. And that's really why you're seeing such dramatic change in the newsfeed. So as a metric, understanding how you can manage to engage outside of the network is important. It's something that you should be measuring. Here's a great example I like to use when speaking to people about social media is one of the LinkedIn networks, their environment. Now, if I have connected with you on LinkedIn, I can easily go to your profile and see your email address, your contact info, etc. And I can take the conversation outside of the LinkedIn network without too much trouble, really. It's actually quite easy. If I compare this to Facebook, a fan of my page, it is almost impossible to determine the details outside of the Facebook UI, user interface, for continued or extended communication. In fact, Facebook is doing everything they can to try and increase that wall, with their increased exposure with Messenger, their live streaming videos. They want to make it all encompassing, right? That you don't have to leave Facebook. And honestly, if you watch some people, if you do study groups with people and watch how they navigate, people don't like to leave the network. A little side story, I was recently on a forum that when you clicked on a link that took you outside of the network, it actually popped up a warning that you were leaving the safety of the forum. Okay, so if you're a user and you're experiencing that kind of environment and you've chosen to work and grow this forum, you're going to have a real wall that you got to get people through to get them outside of that network so you can build and extend on the relationship. Okay, now this isn't a deal breaker because there are strategies you can employ, but you need to be aware of it. You need to be aware of it. And one of your key metrics should be, can you move the prospect into a funnel that you can manage? So this image essentially is a good example of that funnel. You have the network, the social media network at the top where this huge base is available to you, right? And then So hopefully the right people in that base start to become a fan of your page, or they connect to your profile, and then you start to share content to prove you're an authority on your topic, and they start engaging with that content, and then some of them actually are willing to go outside of that network and opt into you and communicate more on a one-to-one basis. All right, and this is a great way to look at strategy of a social media network as well. Okay. Okay. So what have we covered here? Let's sum up where we've gone. Now, we know it's critical to carefully select the social media networks we're going to target, because frankly, we're going to invest a lot, whether it's sweat equity, outsourcing costs, or a combination of both. Social media is not free by any means. It's going to take time to build results. So ideally, we don't want to waste time chasing harder and further than we have to in order to accomplish our goals. So we want to understand the demographics of the social media network and the forums that we're going to invest in. We want to do some pre-work, which is those 3 factors that we were looking at. And we want to understand, is our ideal client present, and what percentage of the base do they actually represent? How big is that network? And therefore, how much opportunity to noise is there? How much are we going to have to fight there, right? And finally, is the network proprietary? How difficult will it be to engage outside of that network with your ideal client? Now, these are simple steps. They're not, like I said, rocket science, but they are important to the point that they will lead you to making a better decision that you can confidently invest in. If we go back to point number 2 of the reason why to do this work and the fact that it's going to take time, having done this due diligence up front is going to get you through that long haul, because you know you're on the right track. You did those initial steps that needed to be done to confirm that your end result was obtainable. It was there for you if you continued to flow through. Okay, so I'm going to open up momentarily to questions, because I see several questions coming in, and I'm happy to answer those, which is great. But before I do, I did want to let you know about a service that we offer, which I highly encourage you to take advantage of, because, well, frankly, people get a lot from this. Above are some of the services that we actually offer as a company, but what I'm actually going to share with you is actually free, so the price is right. But as I said in the introduction, we do consulting, search engine optimization, search marketing, social media optimization. We are a full service firm. But really what I want to talk to you about is the next step, the next evolution, which is we offer a 30-minute free consultation to discuss any business marketing strategy questions you might have one-on-one, or challenges that you might have that you just want an outside voice for. Okay. Now, this is an opportunity to have a deeper conversation that's specific to your business with no obligation. Okay, there is no obligation with this. We really do enjoy talking to businesses and getting to know them a little better and understand their challenges and give them some guidance. So if you're interested in scheduling a call, you just head over to gillsolutions.com/booking and you select free coaching consult and schedule a time that works for you on your schedule. And you can schedule it in January if you want, or there's still some spaces left in December. But schedule a time that works for you and hop on that call. I do a lot of the calls personally. Some of my team do the calls, and you're going to find that it's very beneficial to you. Okay, I'm also going to post the checklist to download, just a short guide to check off when evaluating your social media networks, and also open up now to any questions. Let me try and get this guide in here first, because I haven't done it this way before. But I'm going to drop the file, hopefully. There we go. Into the chat. So it's uploading now. It's uploaded. Maybe if somebody could just confirm that they can grab that. I don't think I have to do anything else to it. I hope it's there for you. If there's any problems, let me know. Failing that, I'll send the link out, and we'll go from there. Okay, so I'm waiting to get confirmation on that. We're going to open up for questions, grab a drink here, and plug in any questions that you might have, and we'll take a look at those now. Okay. Well, thank you, Richard. I'm glad that was helpful. I'm glad it was informative. All right. Okay. Richard asks, and this is a question that we actually hear a lot. When we go in to see new clients, it's often when it comes to social media because they've been told they have to be on Facebook. They have to be there. Let's talk about that just quickly for a second. It's not a complicated question when you start to sit back and think about it for a second. And believe me, I'm not bashing Facebook. I think Facebook has amazing marketing opportunities, and you should be considering it, whether it be for your social media strategy or your search engine marketing strategy. Okay, so please take that into mind. But when people say have to, I normally ask them, how many customers would be a game changer in a marketing strategy for them? How many customers do you need in a year? And for some, that might be, as low as 5. For others, it might be 500. For others, it might be, 5,000. Depends on really your industry and your business and the size of your business, right? But I've never once, ever had a person say to me, I need 10 million more customers, or I need 100 million or 1 billion. I've never had that happen to this point. So, and I'm actually being very serious when I say this. You have to realize that although Facebook is the biggest, doesn't necessarily make it the best for your business. And this is where you got to really factor in. If I go back to the example that I was saying on the golf forum, and you told me that you had, as a business owner, an hour a week to invest in social media, well, I can tell you your hour a week is not going to make a dent in Facebook for a long time to come. But on a golf forum where all of the audience is your ideal client, you can start getting results very, very quickly with that hour in a week, and potentially upping your time because you're seeing those hours. So I'm of the firm belief, in specific answer to your question, is you don't have to be on any network. In fact, that's how people join too many networks to begin with, is they get on Facebook, they get on Twitter, they get on LinkedIn, they get on Pinterest, they get on Google+, they do all of them and say, okay, I have to be there. Now, from an SEO perspective, you have to create a profile. That does not mean you have to actually work that profile. Invest in 1, 2, or 3 maximum. There's very few times I've ever seen anybody convince me they need more than 3 networks to accomplish their business goals. And it's really a matter of thinking about social media differently, as opposed to thinking about it from the perspective of peer pressure. The market is there. Oh my God, I got to be there. But taking a step back and thinking, okay, what are my goals? And how many do I need to achieve those goals? Okay. I was in a conversation recently about click-through rate and that with a fellow peer, and it's amazing when you have the right audience. Those metrics of things like click-through rate and engagement levels, they change totally different. But when you're trying to actually get your voice through to the audience and having a hard time doing that, it's an uphill battle. San Francisco hills, right? You're climbing the big hills just to get there. So no, I would totally disagree with the statement that you have to be on Facebook. But if you want to be on Facebook and you love the environment and you personally love being on there and enjoy it, you're going to work it a lot harder than one that you may not. Okay, so that really helps. Okay, hopefully that answered your question. Stephanie asks, her market is very much promoting her to be on Instagram. So I'm presuming by your market, you're saying that your customers, Stephanie, are telling you that they're on Instagram. Okay, but she has a hard time with photos. She's not a smartphone person, I guess, and photos are a challenge. Okay, so going back to when I was giving you the example in YouTube and knowing your strengths, knowing your weaknesses, knowing what mediums you like to work in. Content is the biggest roadblock for most social media success. If you're not producing enough content, it's really hard to pump out a voice, if you will. You can share other people's work, and that's great, but that shouldn't be 100% of your strategy. So you have two choices. You either invest in that technology to make your life easier, get a smartphone, get an iPad, whatever the case may be, a tablet, and start creating a discipline of taking more photos. It's actually one of the easier ways to contribute content, because you don't have to put a story per se behind it. You don't have to write 1,000 words or what have you. But you either do that and make it easy so that you can do the discipline, or you outsource it. You hire a photographer to come in maybe once a week for 2 hours. They're fairly cheap if you look around, and that way you have a discipline being created for you, or you just don't do that network. Okay, and that's not a bad thing. That is not a bad thing. If you don't want to go the hiring of somebody, you don't want to go down the technology route, don't try and push through a network that you're not going to stick with. Okay, because social media, we didn't mention it in the presentation, but social media takes consistency. Okay, it takes consistency, and it takes a lot of that content. So you need to be prepared to go through with that. Okay, hopefully that helps. Other questions? What do I think of forums over the major social media networks? I think forums are awesome. I don't think businesses consider forums as much as they should. And a lot of industries actually, sorry, that was Roger who asked that question. A lot of industries have great forums. Unfortunately, a lot of industries don't have great forums. So you need to check the activity level, not just the user base, but the activity level. How frequently articles are being posted, how engaged questions are being answered. And the thing with forums is you almost jump ahead in the social media process. So when we're developing our social media profiles, right, we're building an audience. We're trying to get likes, fans, whatever the case may be, and then build engagement. Well, in a forum, you can skip the building part to a certain degree, but you're jumping right into the engagement, and that means heavy duty work, right? This is heavy lifting now, because you got to go find the engagement. It's not necessarily going to come to you. So just know that. But if you have a strong forum in your industry, I highly recommend it. Okay, Judith asked, should I start with 2 networks, or how about 1, like you're suggesting in the presentation? The question comes down to time. And this is a debate for many social media experts. How much time does social media take? You know, some will say 5 hours a week, some will say 20 hours a week. It really varies. My suggestion is, first, in the evaluation of your own resources, and that would have actually been really good to put on that evaluation form to evaluate your resources. Maybe we'll update that. But in the evaluation of your own resources, you have to determine realistically and be conservative how much time you can invest in this on a weekly basis. Bear in mind, when I say invest in it, I mean and get no results for a little while. You got to be okay with that, right? And that's a real eye opener. I'm going to invest 2, 3, 4, 5 hours a week and I get nothing from it. Okay, you got to be able to do that for potentially a few months, right? Potentially a year or more. Who knows, depending on what network you're on, right? And how you're approaching things. So you got to be able to invest that. And when you lay out your resources as far as what you're prepared to invest with no return for the upcoming period, until it actually creates those conversions that you want, you got to say, okay, well, if I only have an hour, do I want to split that into 30-minute segments between these 2 networks? Or do I want to put that hour into 1 network? I usually say, unless you're prepared to spend at least 5 hours per week or more, do not go deep into more than 1 network, okay? because you just won't get the penetration you need. Now, if you're going after 2 forums, okay, maybe you can do 2 in 5 hours or 3 hours or 4 hours. But if Facebook's on your list, or Instagram's on your list, or Twitter, oh God, Twitter's on your list, there's a feed that moves fast, right? Then you got to be able to put in that extra amount of time. Okay, one more question. I know there's several questions there. I'm just going to scan through these and grab one. Please, if I didn't get to your question, even if I did get to your question, head over to gillsolutions.com/booking and book that free coaching session. You won't regret it. It'll be good for your business. But let's answer one more here, and then we'll wrap up today. Okay. There you go, Twitter. We'll talk about Twitter here. George, I noticed you didn't mention Twitter in your presentation. Does that mean that you are against using Twitter as a social media to build your business? Not at all. You'll notice there on the slide in front of you right now, we got twitter.com/guildsolutions, right? We use Twitter aggressively, but more from a repurposing component. So I know businesses and I have clients that build Twitter to actually convert for their business. It is another network that takes a lot of effort. And it's breaking up that effort because that stream moves so fast. Your strategy can't be an hour in the morning. If you got an hour a day, it's 15 minutes, 15 minutes, 15 minutes, 15 minutes. It's just a different way. So for our team, that doesn't work well for us. Repurposing, so using tools to automate content distribution on Gill Solutions, Twitter account is not a problem. It's fairly easy. And we get leads from Twitter all the time. It's just from an ROI perspective, we get better results on different networks that we're on. Okay, so Twitter can be very powerful. The key with Twitter is knowing that you got to deal with the noise. And how you're going to deal with the noise is definitely through breaking your day up. It's also through refining your list, right? And going out after conversations, almost like a forum approach. So it's just a different strategy. In the checklist, you'll notice that you're evaluating the user interface, and that's part of what you need to do. You need to understand, how are the successful people doing it on this network? And you'll see that they are going after conversations and engaging outside of just post, 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 post. If you look at ours, we don't do that very often on Twitter. We just post, 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 right? And benefit off of that. And that's a choice. That's a choice. I know that we focus primarily on 3 networks. Okay, and Twitter is not a major focus for us at this time. Could it be in the future? Yeah, but Twitter has a little bit of a mystery future at the moment, so it won't be a quick change. All right? Okay, everybody, thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you found that very valuable. By all means, share it in Twitter and LinkedIn and Facebook. We really appreciate that. If you're not following us on those networks, please do. And don't forget, most importantly, head over to gillsolutions.com/booking. Book that free coaching call. As I said, you won't regret that. Thank you for taking the time today to join me, and I look forward to seeing you on the next webinar. Have a fantastic day, everybody. Thank you. Bye-bye. Thanks, Roger. Thanks, Jeff. Stephanie, excellent.